What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Fires in the Distance. It is great to be able to talk with you both today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. I was just listening to the album Air Not Meant for Us. This album is absolutely fucking killer, and I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear it. But for people who haven't heard the full-length album, being that it's not coming out till April 28th, do you feel that the first two singles that we heard, Wisdom of the Falling Leaves and Idiopathic Despair, is a good representation of this whole album, or is that just scratching the surface of what's to come?
I don't know, man. I feel like it's kind of just scratching the surface in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely scratching the surface. It's a good starter for that. That's why we decided to put those out, but there's a lot more in there too.
Mm-hmm. Was the vision of this album to sort of just continue where you left off after Echoes from Deep November, or were you trying to step into more uncharted territory and let this sort of be a new beginning for Fires in the Distance?
They're kind of different inflection points for the bands. You know, when we started, Echoes from Deep November was kind of an experiment. We were thinking that at first it would be an instrumental album, and then we decided to go with it, get vocals in it. We thought it would just be kind of a one-off thing. We never really had an intention of being a band after that. And when it got scooped up by Prosthetic, that kind of upped the ante a little bit. We have more traditional death metal and melodic death metal backgrounds. So when people showed an interest in it, it was kind of like, oh, okay, like if you guys like this, then we can absolutely roll with it. And it kind of just took on a life of its own. So this album has a lot more purpose and a lot more identity than Echoes, which was a little bit more testing the waters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Was there at all a preconceived vision of what Air Not Meant for Us was supposed to be, or was this also maybe like a very improvisational, experimental songwriting process?
I would say there was a vision, to make it better than the first album, raise the bar, and it still tackles the same theme, if you will, which would be, living with a lot of depression.
That's not really let's give Igor some credit because he's not here, man.
It's Igor is the composer, but he is unfortunately not here. So, but I would say it's got the same feeling to it, but it's we delve deeper into it.
But musically, we did have the chance to work with Randy Slaw, who has done orchestrations for Devin Townsend Project, Tesseract, Periphery. So musically, I think we were able to expand on the orchestral and symphonic elements. But I think while respecting Igor's kind of like personal input to this and his vision, I think that really the intention was the listener can get whatever they need out of it. There was like no kind of interpretation that we wanted the audience to feel. We wanted it to be a broad enough where for whatever it means to the listener, that's cool to them. That's individual to them. We don't want to kind of push any preconceived notions to our audience.
Subjective, definitely. Absolutely.
So it's fair to say that Air Not Meant for Us is not a concept album, so to speak. It's not like you need to start off with Harbingers and end with Idiopathic Despair. It seems like a listener can approach this album from any different angle.
Yeah, I think depending on the listener's taste, certain songs might gravitate more towards others. Aside from the singles, for people that like more of the heavy hitters, Crumbling Pillars of a Tranquil Mind will hit nicely. There's an instrumental track on there that is a little bit more guitar oriented. So I think there's a little bit for everybody, but whether the album is enjoyed in its entirety or song by song, I think there's a little bit for lots of folks, but we've definitely expanded the sound a bit and we hope people dig it once it comes out.
Is it fair to say like trying new things is fairly easy for you guys because you have instrumental tracks, you have symphonic elements, you have death metal, doom metal, you really manage to like cover many different aspects along the metal catalog. So is it fair to say that maybe trying new things is a little bit more flexible for you guys?
I don't know, man. I felt like we were a lot more disciplined this time around.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we try new things to an extent, but not too much out of our element that, our sound is our sound, I think if anything, if we try anything new, it's just going to be to build upon what we've already got and try to make it just different and even, more interesting and better, if anything.
Yeah.
I also think that having had the time to work through the tracks, jam on them as a band, we kind of had a feel for what these songs were. And reflecting on our time in the studio doing our instruments and our vocals, we were really trying to optimize those tracks. So we don't really see them as new things, but like these are the songs that we got to give justice to, and these are the performances we need to capture with enough feeling where the audience gets what we're trying to put out there.
Yeah. In terms of like the melodic entities on here, because I really feel like the melody is what really captures my ear the most on here. Is everything we're hearing sort of like reflective of an emotion that all of you were sort of feeling at that particular time, or is the music not so much a self-portrait and it's more or less an escapism of who you personally are?
Well, again, I think that a lot of these are very deep and personal reflections from Igor and his experiences and his stories, but you know, it's almost like as the instruments behind the vision and the composition, it's like you're an actor kind of playing your part. So we get where he's coming from. We know what he's feeling, and we want to make sure that's clear to the listener. But I think that in terms of where they sit personally, I mean, I think that just comes from experience, but it's meant to be interpreted in a way that the listener can kind of capture and put their own spin on it.
I mean, you know, to add to that, I think that, you know, I mean, we've all been really close friends for years since we were in our teens. We've all known each other. And I think that, you know, when he writes stuff that he puts into mind not only his emotions, but all the stuff that we've, you know, also had going in our life. So, like, to Craig's point, we are definitely knowing how to portray the emotion that Igor's getting out there when he's writing the stuff. But I think because it definitely does, you know, hit us. Like, it does tug on our emotions for sure, because we can, just the emotion that we're trying to get across, we've all experienced that in one way or another. So I think it makes definitely like, it's just really like when we're all playing together, we're driving, it's just the music. We're like one entity. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you let me perfectly answer the next question, because whenever I interview a band and like they would tell me after I asked how the making of an album was, and they would tell me that we all collectively came together and you know it was all mutually, that I don't really believe that, because you're in a band with 4 to 5 other people, you're writing a dozen or so songs, in your case 6 songs. There's got to be some room for disagreement in there, but could that maybe having different tastes or different ideas maybe actually help add contrast to the material as well?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, yeah, and like there's plenty of disagreements, but it's never personal.
Of course.
You know, like we've known each other for so long. If there's something that's a disagreement, that's an opportunity for growth, and it's an opportunity to better get the message across. So that's part of the process. You know, I don't think any of us are just going to, you know, like get really bent out of shape about something or being disagreed with. I mean, that's I think why we all have friends, and that's why we all have people we work with, right?
Yeah.
You get a better vision and a better product than if you're just doing it all on your own.
Yeah, and you know, I've had Igor, like, he'll come over and he'll show me the songs, or like when he was starting Air, yeah, we'll listen to it, and I'll be like, hey man, maybe if you like, you know, add this here, do this. Sometimes he'll be like, all right, and sometimes he'll be like, no, and sometimes we'll disagree. But in the end, you know, like he does definitely think about our input, you know, as well for that stuff, which is a good thing. It does help expand.
This is a real evolutionary jump, I would say, between your first album and now. And I'm probably asking this question way too prematurely, but do you feel like that with Air Not Meant for Us, did that open up a lot more doors for new songwriting in the future?
I think it opened up a lot more experience. Aside from just recording the music, this was probably the most difficult record I've ever recorded logistically. Yeah. We had everything thrown at us. We almost lost our studio time because of COVID-19, and we almost didn't record the drums after our producer drove up here from North Carolina.
Yeah.
We had to, I think, do 3 trips, 16-hour drives each way to Asheville to record our instruments. Yep. We had a blizzard the first day we were doing drums. I mean, it was such a contrast between having every challenge thrown at us just to get the record made. But as soon as we hit play, it was like, or record rather, it was like the smoothest musical experience I've had. So I think we've got a lot of things to reflect on as a band and a lot of experiences that we've grown on. So, you know, we'll see where it goes from here, but we're going to take it one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to writing a third album, I mean, I couldn't even, I don't even think any of us could answer that really, because we put so much energy into this one, you know. But I can say, because of how hard it was to record this and just the amount of discipline we all had, and I know that I would expect the third one to go smoother than this one did, you know. And we're just it also just like life experiences too, you know. It's kind of crazy to say, but if something traumatic happens to one of us or something, we'll probably write about it, you know, because that's a way to get your pain out, you know.
That's not unusual at all. I mean, the famous saying, when we are at our worst, art tends to be at its best, right?
Right, man. Oh yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to the writing and everything together, is it easier to maybe come up with different ideas when you're more or less in the company of each other? You mentioned you guys have been friends for a very long time. Is it better when you're in the company of each other when creating new music, or isolation being such a great fuel for creativity, you guys prefer to be more alone in your own element when cultivating new ideas?
Isolation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, so this is for me, like, yeah, we've known each other for a long time, very long, since we were teens. But I was always the type of guy that would write with. I was in previous bands, you know, Craig was in previous bands. I would write with my guys. We would just all get together, drummer, guitar player, bass player, me, and we'd sit there and we'd just write. But the way that Igor writes is he writes by himself. Whatever he comes up with, he completely isolates himself, and then records scratch tracks, and then he'll give it to us to work on. And then, like, you know, we'll kind of like he'll change things here and there. So for Fires, I would say isolation, to Craig's point, definitely. But that's something I had to get used to doing, because for me it was like a weird thing. Never had that before, but it's working well. So
I just think part of it comes with time and just being adults, man. It's like we don't have as much time as we used to. Like, we all, like, when we're rehearsing, it's not something that we're doing, you know, 3 times a week. It's sacred time where I want to be prepared and I want to focus on playing as a unit instead of figuring out my parts or writing on the fly.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think you definitely use your time wisely for the making of this album as well. And you know, you mentioned you were all in other bands. You know, there's no way I'm looking on Metal Archives, just no way at all. But like, you know, I do know that bands such as Archaic Decapitator and Engraved, it plays a role, as well as 60 Grit also plays a role. But being that everybody has been involved in other projects, did that all maybe help you bring in this stuff for Fires in the Distance, or were you all with the formation of this band trying to step into uncharted territory that you never really did before?
I think there's an element of trust, you know, where it's just like we all kind of knew each other, knew what our strengths were going into this. I know that when I heard Christian was going to be involved in this, when Igor asked me to play bass, I was like, dude, he's like one of the best vocalists I know. How are we not going to have him do vocals on this?
Oh, thanks, Craig.
I was like, come on. I was like, yeah, man. I was like, I think we'd really be missing the mark if we did this as instrumental music.
Yeah, no, I you know, what's funny is when we were first jamming on this, like in 2016, you know, I didn't want to sing anymore. Like, I just wanted to do guitar, but it was because it was going to be an instrumental. And then, you know, the Craig and the rest of the guys were just like, come on, man, you got to do some vocals. So, and I ended up doing, because I love singing, man, you know, like I do, but I love playing guitar too. But I'm happy without doing one or the other. Without it, like if I'm singing and not playing, it feels weird. If I'm playing and not singing, it feels weird. So I got to kind of do both. But yeah, I mean, I think this was the style of death doom, melodic death doom. I think especially the doom element was uncharted territory for all of us, because it was either melodic death metal, blackened death metal, you know, and heavy metal. So there's no doom, even though like I'm a big fan of Type O Negative and, you know, Ex Genesis and, you know, bands like that. And the rest of the guys have their love for other doom bands too. So, you know, definitely uncharted though. And it worked out well.
Definitely, I would say. And you speaking of vocals, I was going to ask if there's ever a time where a lyrical idea or a lyrical concept could help dictate the direction of the sound as well, or do you all prefer to have music before any vocals or lyrics come to fruition?
Usually music before lyrics, but I think one point of emphasis on vocal growth for this record is we really wanted to focus not just on the lyrics, but like what the emphasis, where the note range was going to be. And, we had a long drive down to North Carolina before we were doing our vocal session. And we really used it to meticulously plan out each and every part. Yeah. So not just what you're singing, but how that's coming across and what we wanted the audience to feel.
Yeah, and Craig and I, because he does backing vocals with me, and what he is like. Honestly, I couldn't ask for a better guy to sing with me because our voices jive really well together. He has a range where he can go really high and really low, and I can go really high or really low too. And when we either do the demonic, like one of us does high, one of us does low, or there's a part that's like freaking nuts on the guitar. He can do vocals for that part while I'm playing the guitar riffs, like for example, Idiopathic, that's kind of a more melodic depth in the middle, like the faster part. He's doing the vocals there because there's the guitar part's nuts in that one part there. Just sing and play that you can, but it's just it has to be very tight. So having him do the vocals there and just the way the key signature we're playing in there, it's perfect with his voice too. So,
well,
we all go through all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is a question I always ask with bands that have multiple singers, and regardless if it's Lacuna Coil or We Came as Romans or Flesh God Apocalypse, do all of you need to kind of feel the same way emotionally when the lyrics and the vocals are coming together to make the song sound like you in order to harmonize off of each other, or being that you all have different usages of your voice that maybe you rely on being in different headspaces?
I think part of being a musician is you kind of have to know how to act out your part. So I think you have to be cognizant of what the feeling, what the tone of the song is, and what emotion is supposed to be there and fits. But it's the musician's job to recreate it, whether you're feeling it or not.
I mean, I feel the parts there for sure. When I'm playing, nothing is there. It's just the guys and my guitar and the microphone. So yeah, I'm feeling it because I mentally get myself in a space every single time I play, whether we're rehearsing or whether we're doing a live thing, just to get to really try to intensify the music, the feeling of the music to what it does to me, that's just me personally. But like Craig was saying too, if you're not in that same headspace, your good musician can obviously adapt to that, and make it solid.
Of course. So before we go, I want to thank you all so much for your time today, for such a great chat, and most of all, thank you for just an incredible album. Is there just anything else with Fires in the Distance that you'd like to promote for the near future?
Yeah, we've got a number of show dates that are coming up along the East Coast. So for any fans that might be listening to this on the eastern half of the U.S., stay tuned for some announcements after April 28th, and we hope to see you on the road.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Hope to see you guys here in New York. But thank you so much.
Most definitely.
Hell yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Everybody, we are here with Fires in the Distance, Air Not Meant for Us. Be sure to check it out. Coming out via Prosthetic Records, April 28th. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.